Welcome back, my fellow seekers of truth. It's your favorite cyber prophet, Dave, here to shine a light on the shadowy practices of corporate giants. Today, let's talk about GEICO, the supposed champion of savings that's actually a scourge on its employees. First, let's tackle the mental health toll. Imagine working in a place where every mistake is magnified, where you're blamed for metrics you can't control, and where even a small misstep can earn you a performance improvement plan. That constant pressure doesn't just stay at work, it seeps into your mind, your body, your soul. Employees have shared how the relentless demands and lack of support lead to anxiety, depression, and even burnout. But does GEICO care? No. They chalk it up to company culture and move on. Now let's talk about money, or the lack of it. You'd think a multi-billion-dollar company would pay its employees enough to reflect their skills, especially those with advanced degrees. But no. Associates with master's degrees report earning salaries barely above entry level, struggling to keep up with their loans and basic expenses. This isn't just underpayment, it's exploitation. GEICO doesn't value your degree. They value how little they can pay you while squeezing out maximum effort. What happens when you combine mental health deterioration with financial strain? Family strife. The stress doesn't stay in the office. It follows you home. It's there when you're short with your partner, when you're too tired to play with your kids, when the weight of unpaid bills sits like a rock on your chest. Employees describe broken relationships, damaged confidence, and homes filled with tension. And GEICO? They're too busy calculating profits to notice. Here's where it gets even darker, the compounding effects. A job at GEICO doesn't just hurt the associate. It ripples outward, touching their family, their children, and even future generations. A child who grows up in financial instability, watching their parents overworked and underappreciated, carries that trauma into adulthood. This is how one toxic workplace can ruin more than just one life. It can leave scars that last for decades. GEICO doesn't realize, or maybe they just don't care, how these effects snowball. They're focused on their bottom line while employees are left picking up the pieces of their lives. A job should provide stability, not leave you doubting your worth, your future, and your family's well-being. So what's the solution? First, GEICO needs to treat its employees like human beings. Pay them fairly, support their mental health, create an environment where people can thrive instead of just survive. And to the employees, you're worth more than this. Advocate for yourselves, seek better opportunities, and remember, you're not defined by what GEICO thinks of you. Because in the end, GEICO isn't just an insurance company. It's a scourge, and no one should have to live under its shadow. Let's take a moment to talk about GEICO's other genius move: ranking all employees. Any business school textbook will tell you this is bad practice number one. Why? Because ranking employees creates unnecessary competition, discourages teamwork, and demoralizes even high performers. And here's the kicker. At GEICO, the person with the best score on any given day isn't necessarily the hardest worker or the most skilled. It's the person who happens to get the fewest angry customers. Or worse, it's the person who aligns with the right protected class category that the customer prefers. That's right. Your performance metrics can hinge on things entirely out of your control: a customer's mood, their prejudices, or their arbitrary preferences. Imagine working tirelessly only to be ranked poorly because you were unlucky enough to deal with a string of irate customers, or because you didn't fit the unspoken biases of the people calling in that day. This isn't a fair or productive system. It's a rigged lottery. And instead of recognizing the flaws, GEICO doubles down, punishing employees for circumstances they couldn't possibly change. Ranking employees this way isn't just outdated and destructive, it's downright unethical. Here's some free advice for GEICO. Ditch the metrics driven by chance and bias. Treat your employees like the humans they are, not pawns in a game of arbitrary rankings. Because right now, You're not just losing employees, you're losing your soul. Now let's talk about GEICO's obsession with breaks and login times. Their culture doesn't outright memo you every time you're late by a second, but they've created a system where the expectation is clear. You better not be late. But here's the problem. No one shows up to work exactly on time. Employees always log in a few minutes early to avoid the risk of being that person who's late. And do they get paid for those extra minutes? Of course not. That's unpaid labor, folks. When you add it all up, those few minutes every day become hours of unpaid work every year. And unpaid work is a polite term for what it really is: slavery. Let's call it what it is. Tiny Tim isn't an employee. Tiny Tim is a slave, chained to a cubicle where the clock is always ticking against him. This is the culture GEICO has cultivated. A place where employees are conditioned to give more than they're paid for and punished for the slightest deviation from perfection. It's not just unethical, it's dystopian. So, to GEICO, stop exploiting your workers, stop normalizing unpaid labor, and stop pretending that this isn't modern-day servitude, because the rest of us see it for exactly what it is. Welcome back, my friends. It's your favorite cyber prophet, Dave, here to lay down some hard truths and holy wisdom. Today, we're diving into the swamp of corporate exploitation, specifically GEICO, and why there's nothing Christian, conservative, or even remotely right-wing about letting corporations treat their workers like disposable cogs in a machine. Let me start with this. Woke corporations like GEICO are not your allies, my friends. They've wrapped themselves in a veneer of progressivism while practicing the most anti-human, anti-worker exploitation imaginable. And here's the kicker. The only ones cheering this on are left-wing elitists, the same crowd who loves centralized power and top-down control. These so-called woke corporations aren't fighting for you. They're fighting for their shareholders and their bottom line. The Christian perspective. Let's talk theology. Orthodox Christianity teaches that every human being is made in the image of God, imago Dei. This means that every person, including every employee, deserves dignity, respect, and fairness. Exploitation? That's a sin. Proverbs 22:16 warns, "Whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth will only come to poverty." What does GEICO do? They underpay employees, even those with advanced degrees, and trap them in dead-end jobs, tying their worth to arbitrary metrics instead of valuing their God-given potential. This isn't just wrong. It's a violation of biblical justice. As St. Basil the Great said, "When someone steals a man's clothes, we call him a thief. Should we not give the same name to one who could clothe the naked and does not?" By refusing to pay workers fairly, GEICO steals from them, not just their wages, but their dignity. And no amount of diversity initiatives or Gecko commercials can cover that up. The right-wing perspective. Now let's switch gears to conservative ideology. Conservatism values hard work, personal responsibility, and free markets. But let me tell you, there's nothing conservative about corporations exploiting their workers. True conservatives believe in subsidiarity, the idea that power and resources should be kept at the lowest possible level, close to the individual and the family. Exploitation by a faceless corporation like GEICO goes against this principle. When GEICO ties advancement opportunities to arbitrary metrics like customer scores, scores that are influenced by random factors or even customer prejudices, it centralizes power in the hands of unaccountable corporate managers. That's not conservatism. That's leftist bureaucratic nonsense. They're creating a system where workers are powerless, families are destabilized, and only the elites profit. Sound familiar? That's socialism dressed in corporate attire. And let's not forget about the unpaid labor GEICO demands by forcing employees to log in early or face cultural penalties for being 1 second late. Let me be clear. Forced unpaid labor is slavery. It's the opposite of everything conservatism stands for: freedom, fairness, and rewarding effort. Tiny Tim at GEICO isn't a worker. He's a slave, and any conservative worth their salt should be outraged. Woke corporations are leftist elitists. Here's the irony. Woke corporations like GEICO claim to champion progressive causes while treating their workers like medieval serfs. They distract you with token diversity hires and rainbow logos during Pride Month. But behind the scenes, they're gutting middle-class livelihoods and centralizing power in the hands of a few elites. These are the same leftists who preach equality but hoard wealth and power for themselves. Their endgame? Total centralization of power. They want workers to feel powerless, families to be broken, and individuals to be dependent on their system. And they do it all while pretending to be your ally.
Let me tell you, the real fight isn't left versus right anymore. It's elites versus everyone else. And corporations like GEICO, they're firmly on the side of the elites. Call to action.
So, what do we do? First, we reclaim the conversation. True Christians and conservatives must call out these practices for what they are: exploitation. It's time to demand corporate accountability, not through government overreach, but by holding companies to the standards of moral and economic justice. Second, stop buying the lies of these woke corporations. They're not here to save you, they're here to enslave you. They pretend to care about social issues, but they don't even care about their workers. Their hypocrisy should make every conservative and Christian's blood boil.
Finally, support businesses that align with your values. Companies that treat their workers fairly, pay them what they're worth, and respect their humanity. Because, let's be real, the free market isn't free if it's rigged by corporate greed and leftist elitism. GEICO and its woke ilk are nothing more than wolves in sheep's clothing. They exploit their workers, centralize power, and destroy families, all while preaching the gospel of progressivism. But don't let their shiny commercials and "we're hiring" slogans fool you. They're not on your side. There's nothing Christian or conservative about letting them win. Let me leave you with this, my friends. These unaccountable corporations, these modern-day pharaohs who think they can enslave workers, exploit their labor, and centralize power in the hands of elites, they believe they're untouchable. They believe their profits will shield them from justice. But let me remind you, no one escapes the judgment of God. The scriptures are clear. In James 5:1-4 it says, "Come now, you rich, weep and howl for the miseries that are coming upon you. Behold, the wages of the laborers who mowed your fields, which you kept back by fraud, are crying out against you, and the cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord of hosts." GEICO and corporations like it are no exception. Their sins, the underpayment, the exploitation, the dehumanization, are piling up, and the day of reckoning will come. And let's not forget the power of the poets. If history teaches us anything, it's that the pen is mightier than the ledger. The wrath of poets has toppled empires and exposed tyrants. They write the truth that no commercial can spin, no corporate PR can bury. They etch the injustices into the annals of history for all to see. The poets are watching, and the words are coming. GEICO and its ilk may try to hide behind their glossy ads and empty slogans, but the truth will out. Their exploitation will be sung, their greed will be condemned, and their deeds will be remembered, not in glory, but in shame. So let this be a warning to the corporate elite. The wrath of God and the wrath of poets are patient, but they are certain. Judgment is coming. Repent, or face the consequences, not violence but spiritual and in reputation, both in this world and the next. The workers, the faithful, and the poets are rising. Choose your side wisely. Let me drop another truth bomb, friends. At GEICO, your entire career can hang on the tiniest, most opaque changes to how metrics are calculated. Changes you might never even know about. Imagine pouring your heart and soul into hitting those targets, only to discover the game was rigged behind the scenes.
Take average handling time, AHT, for example. Let's say you've mastered the art of quick transfers and efficient resolutions, keeping your call times low and your numbers solid. But behind the curtain, without a whisper of notice, GEICO tweaks the system. Suddenly, calls that used to count toward your AHT as long as they hit 30 seconds now require a full minute to qualify. Those quick transfers you've been relying on? They're now dragging your metrics down instead of helping. And here's the kicker. You wouldn't even know. There'd be no memo, no announcement, no transparency. You'd just start seeing your scores drop, your rank tumble, and your career prospects fade, without ever understanding why. Meanwhile, the managers sit back and chalk it up to poor performance. This isn't just bad management, it's sabotage. A system like this doesn't measure your skill, effort, or dedication. It measures your ability to guess at the hidden rules, which are constantly shifting in ways you can't control. That's not fair, it's not just, and it's certainly not Christian or conservative. Here's the lesson. Transparency in metrics isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a moral obligation. When companies like GEICO change the rules in secret, they aren't just moving the goalposts, they're playing with people's lives, their livelihoods, and their futures. And that, my friends, is a betrayal of everything decent, honest, and right. So, to GEICO, if you're going to tie people's careers to numbers, have the integrity to show them how those numbers are calculated. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and so does the reckoning. Let's talk about GEICO's latest dystopian innovation, removing the mute button for everyone except customers. That's right. You can mute yourself from the poor soul calling about their premium hike, but not from the ever-vigilant ears and eyes of GEICO management, quality assurance, or your supervisor. Now, every sneeze, cough, or whispered prayer for the end of your shift is a front-row performance for Big Brother GEICO. Imagine this. Your toddler is reenacting Mad Max. Your dog is howling at the ghost of your sanity, and you mutter, "What fresh hell is this?" only for QA to log it under inappropriate behavior. And don't even get me started on that moment. Your wife or girlfriend bursts into the room mid-call to yell about why you forgot to take out the trash. Of course, it's not just your customer hearing this Oscar-worthy domestic drama. Oh no, it's your SUOP, management, and quality assurance, all sitting there, headsets on, silently judging your life choices. Meanwhile, your wife storms out, and your SUP makes a note. Employee appears distracted. Recommend improvement plan. But wait, it gets worse. What happens when you grab a quick snack between calls? That's right, your supervisor gets to enjoy the symphony of your chewing in high-definition audio. Every crunch, every sip, every accidental slurp beamed straight to their headset. Suddenly, your mid-shift granola bar is a corporate offense. God forbid you take a bite of something crispy. They'll probably log it as excessive noise on the line. It's not just micromanagement, it's micromanagement with surround sound. And the kicker? You're still expected to hit your metrics while starving because apparently the mute button is too much power for the lowly employee to wield responsibly. And let's not forget Tiny Tim, who used to drown out the drudgery with AI-generated bangers of the poems he wrote for Lizard Farm. Now, his private concert is a public broadcast straight to the SUP's headset. It's a brave new world of zero privacy, where the chaos of home life and your desperate attempts to eat become corporate property. So here's to GEICO. Not just insuring your car, but ensuring your last shred of personal dignity goes up in flames. Tiny Tim, keep the music alive in your heart, my dude, because at this point, it's the only freedom any of us have left. Cheers! Until next time, catch you on the corporate flip side. Lead them to paradise.